1. A little bit of context. This is one of the very many bizarre and nuts stories I have from many night shifts I've covered and ran. This particular story happened earlier this year, around January I think. I was helping out on nights as we were having a busy couple of weeks. The city where my hotel is based is known to be a party city, which means most of the people who stay here on the weekend are here for a night out. Night shift typically starts at 11 p.m, but can vary, and we can also fairly accurately predict when our rushes are going to be due to the bar and nightclub closing times. Usually 12 to 1 are where the older gentlemen bars start to shut and you get those guests back. 2 to 3 a.m. are the next set of more trendy bars closing, so the guests from there, and finally 3 to 5 a.m. are when clubs shut, so that's when you get the last of them in. Our hotel has a bar plus a 24-hour license. However, it's completely up to the night manager when the bar ceases to serve alcohol. Our hotel is a residents-only hotel after 11 p.m. too. The front door is locked and only opened by staff to get in unless you're emergency services, hotel staff, security. You need your name and your room number to get in. This policy is implemented until 6 a.m. as a hotel room party/DOS room deterrent. Anyway. The guest in question came back to the hotel somewhere between 2 and 4 a.m. I didn't see her come in as I was completing jobs, sorting tables and breakfast bench for the morning, away from the front desk and door. I come back towards the front desk and start serving on the bar, and this is when I have my first interaction with the guest in question, who for the purposes of anonymity will refer to as Randy Drunk Girl, or RDG. She starts by ordering a round for her and her friends, and then starts chatting to me as I'm pulling the pints. The conversation starts well, as I always try to do when interacting with guests, always puts me in good stead with everyone. She pays for her round and goes back to her table. I then make my way back over to the tables I'm setting up for breakfast, and she follows me over not long after. We set the tables out, and each table has a bowl filled with sugars and sweeteners and whatnot. Anyway, RDG starts getting really flirty, touching my arm, laughing hysterically at my awful jokes and puns, etc. I flirt back a little, occasionally do this with some guests. She jokingly throws one of the bowl of sugars over me, after I made a joke myself. She immediately apologized and felt bad about doing it. She sets off on picking all the condiments up and putting them back. It's at this moment where she firstly starts to get a bit inappropriate. She's wearing quite a tight dress which is low cut, and as she bends over and then comes back up, her dress comes down and her boobs pop out. Me, being someone who quite values their job and not being fired, immediately look away and start getting back to my job while saying something along the lines of, "You need to put those away as you're in a public place." She asks me if I liked what I saw. I respond saying I can't answer that. It ends awkwardly and she goes over to the main desk area to sit with her friends. It continues. I finished the tables and started moving the housekeeping trolleys on each floor, as it's now around 5:30 in the morning. What I didn't know was that while I was finishing the tables, RDG has been talking to my co-workers about me while I wasn't there. My co-workers, thinking it would be hilarious to egg her on, including the night manager, inform her that I finish at 6. I'm known for always being down for a laugh, so they know I'm not going to react poorly or angrily to her advances. I'm now entering a lift with the housekeeping trolley, and this is where RDG joins me before the doors close. Our lifts don't have CCTV in them, and funnily enough, she also knows this from my co-workers who are seen hysterically laughing as the doors close. She starts asking for a kiss and gets a little angry when I reject her advances in favor of keeping my job. This interaction also ends awkwardly, and she gets out when I go back down to reception. I'm about 5 minutes away from finishing my shift, and everything is officially finished, jobs-wise. For my co-workers too, so we're just stood around talking. RDG and all her friends have left and are in their rooms. She comes out of the lift and asks me if we can talk. I oblige. Silly me. This is when she asks me loudly, "Do you want to pump this?" And also, "I know you finish at 5. Do you want to come up to my room and pump this?" A term I've never heard before and yet to hear since, other than when we jokingly recall this event to say it to each other, me and my co-workers. I of course turned down such a formal proposal. It's important to note that she was sharing a room with one of her friends, and I'm not entirely sure how that would have went down, if I had said yes. All in all, probably the most informal I've ever been asked to have coitus. 2. Friendly front desk agent, mainly working second shift here. As you all know, this year has given us front desk agents plenty of interesting and crazy stories to share with each other. This tale is about several interactions I've had over the past few months with guests, which has increased in frequency this past week. All the interactions have one specific topic: protests. You can all probably guess the city where this takes place. We've been in the national spotlight since around May. My city was home to 2 of the individuals killed by police this year that has become mainstream news. In fact, Obra has recently popped up a billboard with one of the individuals' picture on it all over. The only other info I will give is that my property is not located in Minneapolis. So our city has been racked by 2 major nights of riots downtown the first weekend of May, when all the protests happened. The protests were going strong for a few weeks, but have since fizzled out, with 1 or 2 happening here and there, even though attendance of them is light and they barely ever make the news, and from what I've seen from living close to downtown, is that 95% of the protests are peaceful. My property is located out of the city near an expo center, so our main clientele has always been the event crowd for people attending whatever is going on over there. Lately, business has been picking back up after about 4 months of little to no business, which we credit to the expo center having limited events right now. But every booking helps keep my paycheck coming. Since about the end of June, I've had people check in, and every once in a while ask me about the protests going on in the city. Understandably so. The media likes to focus on those 2 main nights of riots, which can scare people not familiar with this city. Our property is about a 10-minute highway drive away from the city where everything happens, so I always reassure concerned guests that no, you don't have to worry about the protesters as long as you stay away from downtown, and that even then, if you leave them alone, they won't bother you. Most people seem reassured, and if they don't, I like to mention that I live 2 minutes away from where the majority of them have happened, and I've never had any issues other than having to take a different road to work. However, every once in a while, we get that one guest who has to flex his masculinity card and talk about how he has a concealed carry or whatever other hyper-masculine line they've got on deck. I tend to just ignore those comments and reassure them like normal, which usually works. Starting this week, it seems like every guest has been asking about protests due to several of them being scheduled for today, 8/25. This is fine, but what really annoys me is the uptick in the backhanded comments from people who have no idea what is going on in my city, and everyone feeling they can share their opinions with me since I'm a burly-looking white male. I brush it off usually, but today struck a nerve with one particular set of guests. I came in early today to relieve my operations manager, who had to work half the night shift and the morning shift. When I pulled into my spot, I noticed an older man walking around looking out all the windows in the lobby. I figured he was waiting for a ride over to the expo center since there is a competitive horse show there this week. So I continued to do my thing, count the drawer, make sure the rooms are assigned and actually clean, new housekeepers, and make some fresh coffee. About an hour goes by before I see him come back into the hotel and approach the desk with his adult son. Apparently, there is a group of protesters down by the university located about 3 large city blocks from us. I look at the local news, and indeed there are. I confirmed this with him, and he just kind of stared at me for a few seconds.
Okay, well, what are you gonna do about it?
I asked him what he would like me to do, which he replied with,
Could you lock the hotel down?
Y'all, it's only 3 o'clock in the afternoon. We normally don't lock our doors until 11 p.m., if at all. So I let him know that won't be possible due to our hotel policy. I assure him that if anything happened, I will take steps to secure the hotel, but pointed out on the news, which was playing next to me, that there were a total of 20 protesters located on said bridge 3 blocks from us, which were surrounded by what seemed to be the whole damn Metro Police Department. He didn't like that answer nonetheless and stormed off. I'll probably get asked about the interaction by my manager tomorrow, but I know I covered my bases. I kid you not, as I am typing this post out, 2 women come in that I checked in last night with their families, and inform me that they are leaving early. Apparently their husbands called them and wanted them to leave town because they're scared of the protests. So naturally they want a refund, not a one-night refund, a whole stay refund because they, and I quote, have been inconvenienced by the protesters trying to ruin our country. It took every fiber in my being to not say something to her other than, I'll have to check with my manager in the morning. Knowing full well my manager, who was at the protest the first 2 weeks, would be denying that after I tell him the reasoning. Whatever. Not my monkeys, not my circus, I'll be off the next 2 days. Whatever happened to the days where I could do my job and not have to worry about someone from a different state spouting off some ignorant rhetoric about my city to my face? I'm a front desk agent at a hotel, not your Facebook wall. Let's not talk about politics or divisive topics while you're checking in or out with me. I've asked my co-workers if they get those comments, but they've confirmed that it's just me. I guess people seem more comfortable sharing their opinions with me, since I'm the only white male that works here. Sorry, Karen. I don't give a fuck about what you think about the protesters. Just give me an ID and a credit card that runs. Do y'all get questions like this? If so, how do you handle it without coming across as rude? I get complaints because I don't have a bubbly customer service voice and can be rather matter-of-fact. Thanks for listening. I'm sure I'll have more of these protest interactions before the night is up, based on the current demographic of our guests, stuffy old rich people with their horses. 3. I work in a small business hotel, 57 rooms, 4 stars. During calmer periods, we offer low season rates, and during one of those quiet shifts, 3 to 11, I received a last-minute booking for the same day. I checked the preferences, and the guest left a comment on his reservation. I would like to have a bouquet of flowers in the room for my girlfriend. It's her birthday. I sporadically need to get some champagne, flowers, emergency makeup, concert tickets, etc. for our esteemed guests. Most guests are happy if they see that you do your best for them. I tried to call the guest 2 times to ask if his girlfriend likes any particular type of flowers. I also wanted to know how much he would like to spend. Nobody picked up the phone. I was already late in the afternoon and most shops in my area would close soon. I could not wait for an answer. If we wanted to provide flowers, we had to go ahead and buy them for him. I got a beautiful arrangement for €30. I was going to put this amount on the invoice, just to be clear. I just wanted to cover our costs and fulfill a request on short notice. I wanted to help. I would be annoyed if this reservation turned into a no-show, but I handled similar requests successfully until now. What could go wrong? My good faith was misplaced. They arrived an hour after we had put the bouquet in the room. The check-in went fine at the beginning, but the conversation deteriorated quickly. Did you get the flowers? Yes, sir. There is a lovely bouquet in the room. I will add the cost to your invoice, and you can pay for them on checkout. A thank you would have been enough, and I would not have been surprised if he had given us a tip. But instead, he looked at me suspiciously. Why would I pay for the flowers? I am not going to pay for them. Really? He was not going to give me a free stuff speech, was he? He suggested that hotels offer some extras for special occasions. Sure, but the hotel decides if it offers something or not. How much generosity can a guest expect if he's a first-time visitor that booked a promotional rate? That rate did not even include breakfast. How can you presume that the flowers you wanted will be free of charge? He added that they were traveling a lot, and he implied that I did not know how hotels work. Every hotel I worked for would have charged the customer for the flowers. He was calm at the start, but he got louder and angrier as time passed. He was making a scene in front of his girlfriend. As far as I was concerned, he was too stingy to buy her some flowers, and I had to suffer for it. Her birthday should matter more to him than me. Come on, be a little generous, and do not be a prick. The smile on my face vanished. I apologize for the misunderstanding, but we expect you to pay for your extras regardless. You should have called me before buying the flowers. I called you twice on the phone number you provided. That is a lie. I see if someone calls me. Why did you buy them if you could not get me on the phone? He probably thought this was a clever reply. All of this misery was apparently my fault. First he tells me I am inept and now a liar. I felt anger in my stomach. He had managed to crawl under my skin. To some degree, I mirrored the angry nonverbal cues that the guest displayed. I clenched my fists behind my counter. I looked him in the eye and started to shout back. Because you asked for them. Why do you expect us to pay for your girlfriend's flowers? This is ridiculous. Your refusal to pay is just bad style. Snap, I knew that went too far. My reply shocked the guest for a moment. Then he yelled, "Bad style? I want to speak to your manager." I barked back at him. "All right, I will call my manager. Have a seat." Was I going to put my job on the line for some stupid flowers? Maybe. A few insults crossed my mind, but I kept my mouth shut. We gazed at each other for a couple more seconds before he turned around and sat down in the lobby. At least I no longer had the guest staring at me. I could have offered the flowers, I could have removed them from the room. I could have called the manager after the first minute, or I could have not bought the flowers in the first place. Every scenario would have ended in defeat. In any case, this was a mess and I had lost control. The time had come to call a clear-headed person that was not involved. I called the duty manager and told him what happened. He came to the lobby a couple of minutes later and sat down with the guests. To my disappointment, he surrendered quickly. He apologized and he offered them the flowers. He wanted a peaceful shift and this had blown out of proportion. My manager finished the check-in and they went upstairs. The guest got what he wanted. I ignored them when they took the elevator. I did not wish them a good stay. I was fuming in silence and I was thinking that kicking them out of the hotel would have been an acceptable solution as well. Afterwards, I had a conversation with my manager about the incident. We were both annoyed that the guest was not willing to pay. We agreed that we should just move on, and he never mentioned it again. This was a frustrating experience. I was not proud of myself. The girlfriend had her flowers. He did not pay for them. We got some room revenue, and I learned a lot from this experience. Everybody won. Happy end? Not quite. During the night, the heating stopped working properly in their room. It was a technical issue, not sabotage. The heating worked fine everywhere else. This was a legitimate complaint, of course. The night auditor offered to move them to another room, or give them an additional blanket, but they refused. We had offered a solution, so we did not offer a further discount. Not after the flowers. They slept in a cold room, and they did not enjoy it. I chuckled the next day when I heard about it. I could not feel sorry for them. 4. We have a regular who is the highest-ranking rewards member in the program. He's been coming to the hotel for years before I even started. Really tall, acts posh and hoity-toity, and has a very high, hoarse voice that you wouldn't expect from a man of his appearance. He's always been one of the difficult ones who has quite the entitlement issue and has been enabled into a monster. Many service recovery stories with this guy just to keep him satisfied and keep corporate off our backs. He stays for 4 to 7 days at a time and always leaves some dry cleaning and 2 very large suitcases with the concierge between stays. Then has it all delivered to his room again upon arrival. He always requests a second luggage rack to prop up the bags. Anyways, he often travels to Asia for business, and eventually started bringing Asian clients to the hotel as well for business meetings and such. Over a relatively short period of time, key employees who have eyes on everything started noticing some of these Asian men getting off on the same floor as our regular, even though their personal rooms were on different floors. We brushed it off as them just deciding to have a meeting in his own room, as that's not uncommon. Besides, this guy is married with kids and always talks about his family. Seems pretty conservative and strict. A bit more time goes by, and those key employees start to notice other men coming by while this regular stays. Men who don't seem to be hotel guests and who aren't often seen again during the regular subsequent stays. They are also very casual looking, not in posh business attire like him. They are noticed getting into the same elevator and getting off in the same elevator as him. Because of his personality, we tend to lean towards there being some sort of reasonable explanation, and are just glad he's a bit more distracted from terrorizing us. More time passes, and then one day, we have a very awkward and shocking event in the morning hours. Yelling and fighting is reported on the top executive floor, so our head concierge and a front desk agent, who is also a cop, run up to check it out. The regular is in an altercation with some random man right outside his guest door. The random man insists the regular was being crazy, and that they knew each other and were together in the room, suggesting sexual activity. While the regular vehemently insists he doesn't know the man and wants him escorted away. The random man was all over the place, as if he were on drugs, and pulled out a knife there in the middle of the hallway. The concierge kicks it out of his hand, and the front desk agent, who is also a cop, jumps in to subdue him. Police arrive and have difficulty subduing this random man. At some point, they or paramedics are trying to attach some sort of pads to his skin for some kind of device they were using for whatever reason, and the pads wouldn't stick because he was oddly slippery. They asked what was all over him, and he proudly, with a big grin, answered, "Lube." Of course, he was escorted out, and the incident was never spoken of again with the regular. Ever since that day, the regular didn't really bother us anymore. He started checking in during the night audit shift and flying under the radar. We barely saw him, even though he stayed nearly every week. It was weird, but we weren't complaining. He still needed his 2 large suitcases with an extra luggage rack delivered to his room during each stay, as usual. We always wondered why he needed so much stuff for stays that were typically no longer than a week. This low-key behavior went on for pretty much over a year. Then COVID happened, and like with most business travelers, he stopped coming around March. About a month ago, we received a call from a woman saying that her husband was a guest of ours and had died. We were shocked to hear it was this regular. She said she believed he stored personal belongings with us, and asked to have them shipped back to them. The concierge had a very sneaking suspicion that there may be something in those bags that his grieving wife would probably not want to know about. Boy, was he right. He opened the bags to find them full of all kinds of sex toys and other related items. Loads of condoms, vibrators, lube, multiple large tubs of Vaseline. It was quite the discovery. He said he wanted to burn off his hands after he took off his 2 layers of gloves. This employee is a saint for removing the secret stash before sending back the luggage, because I definitely would have sent it as is. Just saying. We have yet to discover exactly how he died, as the obituary found online was quite vague. Anyways, yeah. Double lives totally happen, and this one was pretty interesting to witness unfold. These guys really think we don't watch them and investigate them. 5. I had just moved to the area and saw that a new chain hotel was going up not far from where I lived, so I stopped in, spoke to the GM who happened to be on site, and got an application. The GM, Tim, was an older guy, probably late 50s, but seemed personable and pretty much hired me on the spot for the front desk. I had been an AGM, FDM, and sales manager previously. The application was just a formality. At first, the job was good, more difficult than usual, because while the hotel was constructed and in operation, we didn't yet have a property management system, or really any computers at all, besides the GM's in his office. Nor did we have proper signage yet, which did tend to leave some guests grumpy when they had trouble finding us at night. But the crew I worked with was great. The hotel was new, so there were almost no complaints, and the GM had his own suite on property where he lived. If something went wrong, I knew he was upstairs quite literally above the front desk, and only a moment away from coming down to help. I know having the GM on site can be pretty annoying sometimes, but I didn't mind. He generally left us alone. Fast forward a few weeks, and I'm working the PM shift when this attractive woman in her mid-20s comes in. She's wearing a nice dress, heels, and a coat. She barely glances at me before taking the elevator up to the second floor. It was a midweek night, probably a Tuesday or Wednesday. and we had only one room booked in-house, and that was a family. The only other room she could be going to was Tim's. I shrug. It isn't my business. And if that's how Tim wants to spend his money, that's all him. This happened a few more times over the next few weeks. Always PM shift, always specifically when I was working. But a different woman each time, each of them beautiful, very classy looking. I mentioned it to the other front desk staff, asked if anyone had seen it. Nope, it wasn't until the next week when one of the staff had stopped in to pick up her paycheck that someone was with me when a woman who was obviously an escort came in. Went straight to the hotel and up to Tim's room. I quite literally said to my coworker, "Fucking told you." We laughed, she laughed, that was it. Next week I come in after a couple of days off. Tim is nowhere to be found. The person I'm relieving isn't telling me what's going on, and then I see the owner is in the dining area. After the morning person left, the owner comes over to the front desk and says, "Just wanted to let you know personally we fired Tim this morning, for cause." He then proceeded to explain to me that Tim had been erasing people from the ledger. Remember, we didn't have a property management system yet, often moving people rooms to cover it up and pocketing the money for their stay. And at first, when the owner's accountant noticed it, Tim tried to suggest that it was me, and he was told to confront me about it and get some answers, which, of course, he never did, because he knew damned well it wasn't me. The owner kept on him about it, until finally he and his accountant came in on a day Tim wasn't there and went through all the books, matching them up to whichever staff was on duty that night. And though it turned out Tim had fucked up, he'd gotten greedy, and instead of making sure all the blame could be pinned on one staff member, he had done it on a number of nights I wasn't working as well, and he'd done it a hell of a lot. Thousands of dollars in just about 2 months, which explained how he could afford so many high-end escorts. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to Coahw, number 46. And thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use their stories in this video. Oh yeah, this was a difficult set of videos to put together. The thing is, I've sent so many messages to get them done, they're probably all going to come back in after I've got the video. Well, I've got the video made now, obviously, but a combination of that and the fact that yesterday, when I would have got most of this done, I ended up being very lazy. I just didn't have the energy, just could not find the motivation. I looked everywhere. It was under the sofa, wasn't there, in the fridge. No, it wasn't there. No, in that cupboard you never really go into, but sometimes there's stuff in there for some reason. No, it wasn't in there either, but yeah, I just couldn't find the motivation. So I was getting work done, just at a much slower rate, and I kept having hope that I'd get everything done eventually, but eventually I had to conclude, okay, you're up way too late, go to sleep. So I did, and I woke up the next day, and it still took me a couple hours longer than I meant to, but I have got things done. I actually spent a lot of yesterday just watching this guy restore old artwork on YouTube. That was interesting. Probably too interesting. I should pick things less interesting so I can have them on in the background as noise, because I do like background noise as I'm working. That generally makes things go quicker. Okay, that's enough rambling from me. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourselves.